Hey everyone, what is the job of your sales team in your organization? Well, Alan, who's on this podcast today here at the CEO Sales Strategies, is going to teach you that the job of sales is to, frankly, overwhelm your operations department. I know that sounds a little stressful, but stay with us because we're going to teach you how to do that without overwhelming the operations department. But their job in selling is to sell so much that you've got to hire other people. Sound good? Alan, let's talk about it right now. Alan, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies podcast.
Great to be here, and thank you so much for having me, and looking forward to dive into this topic.
Yeah, let's talk about this, the power of effective coaching in sales, doing the fundamentals and getting those sales to the place where, frankly, operations does get overwhelmed. Now, all of you, before you go, oh no, we can't do that. Stay with us. It's not as stressful as you think. Alan, why is the job of sales to overwhelm operations?
I think, Doug, the key point here starts around mindset. Is often what we do is we have a foot somewhere on the accelerator and somewhere on the brake, going, can we do this? Should we do this? Could we do it? But the reality is, if you want one of two problems, which you're only allowed one, the one you don't want is an operations team waiting for things to do. You want an operations team that is floundering because we've driven those sales numbers. And that's where we want to be focusing. Just in our own business, I was coaching one of our salespeople, and they were going, are we sure we can land this whale? I said, that is not a you problem. The you problem is drown operations. Let's make that their problem. And I think when we think like that, we realize that's the value we bring. And I'll just add that very quickly, Doug, because it's negligent to deny customers the value we bring. So our job is not to worry about what we can deliver. I know that's the CEO's challenge, but really what we want is a sales team that's giving you that problem as a CEO. So you can figure out how you fix that through people, resources, and technology.
Yeah. So what we're talking about, folks, we're not talking about making your operations team dysfunctional. That's correct, Alan. We're talking about taking your operations team and revving it up a bit so that they have to perform on a level that they probably never had to perform in the past, or if they did, they're used to it and can then, redo again. You might have to hire some new people. You might have to bring in some systems, some processes that you didn't have before. But that's called growth. Growth's not a bad thing as long as it's done in a manner in which you can not become dysfunctional. Is that a fair statement, Alan?
100%. And I'm glad you clarified that, because what we're saying is that's the mindset play in sales. But what we know is if we take control of our deals through good coaching, we can take control of our pipeline. If we take control of our pipeline, we can take control of our forecast. And if we can get our forecast accuracy to above 90%, where the average is 50%, well, then we create a predictable revenue engine that we can plan around from an operational perspective. So our job is not to make them dysfunctional or surprise them, but our job is not to worry about how that happens. If as a sales leader, we're in control of the pipeline and the forecast, then we don't surprise operations, but we do overwhelm them somewhat because we put our foot heavily on the gas.
So let's talk about the power of effective coaching in sales. I know your company, Growth Matters International, they do a lot of this. Let's talk about doing the fundamentals of selling and preparing people to actually get to that place where not overwhelmed, but where operations is going, hey, we need some love, right? In that capacity. What are the fundamentals and what is the playbook for coaching in sales?
Probably four fundamentals I'll share with you. I'll unpack one by one. I think the first thing we need to realize is there's not a CEO or leader I speak to, Doug, that doesn't tell me that coaching is the most critical thing they need to do. But when you scratch one below that surface, it's the last metric measured and it's the first meeting canceled. So we don't honor it. And a lot of the reason we don't honor it is we actually haven't trained managers how to be effective at a practical coaching, not a theoretical, but very practical. So how do you go about identifying the gap, clarifying the root cause, and exploring the action? And, with a large global software company we've just worked with, we increased their manager confidence by 37%. And that's often the reason. I don't feel confident coaching. And once you've got that confidence, then we know confidence leads to competence. And then they can get better at that. So the first one is you want to create that predictability with your managers that coaching is something they know is valuable and they're confident to do it because it's practical. Can't be theoretical. And my frustration with the coaching is it's so broad. And I always say, okay, what are you coaching against? Because I could be a life coach and a finance coach and a business coach, but we're coaching against what's the deal, what's the pipe, what's the forecast.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I've always found managers' jobs are to grow the revenue in that which they manage and to coach their people to be able to accomplish that. And folks, those of you who are the owners of the companies listening to this, those are the only jobs that your sales manager should have when it comes right down to it. If you've got them doing other things, they're not managing. And so if you promoted your top producer to the manager and your top producer's out there still being the top producer, let's start thinking about whether your top producer should be the manager or not. Your manager is supposed to be duplicating your efforts in each and every step of the way through the process. And if they don't know how to coach, they don't have the ability to have that confidence of coaching. Alan is spot on. You're spot on, Alan, with the assessment, because what happens is the human thing kicks in, right? And it's like, oh no, I'm not good enough at this coaching thing. So I'll either kind of sort of do it or I'm not really into it. They don't understand the role of it. And I also find that managers in general, this is not to pick on you managers, but I find they don't stay consistent at this, nor do they hold the accountability to actually coaching. Can you speak to those 2 points, whether you agree or disagree?
I fully agree. Let me start with the first one. The job of a sales manager is not to grow sales. Their job is to grow salespeople who grow sales. And the reason that is because you want to create a predictable revenue engine. You don't want to be the revenue engine. So the reality is they struggle, Doug, because what you just said, we take most top performing individuals, we promote them into the role of sales management, and we never give them a framework by which to manage that. But if I'm a CEO listening, I don't like anecdotal information. Just to give you some numbers around this, if you think about a global software company, so we're talking about in excess of 1,000 sellers around the globe, by driving this deal coaching program, we got a 5% increase in the win rate. Now, it seems small. Think about that at volume. But then wait a minute. With deals progressing at 15% less sales cycle
Yeah.
and cleaned up and lost deals down by 25%. Now, you scale that across, and here's the punchline, when they added double the amount of deals into their pipeline. That is a massive move on the commercial, not through technology, not through enablement, but through the effective discipline of deal coaching. And that's where operations is going to get a bit of a surprise, because that's a big move in the number. But it's not because it is something fundamentally different. We honored the cadence of coaching. We found a practical way to do it, and we did it consistently, to your point, Doug. And often we don't do it consistently because we lack the confidence that it's having an impact.
So here's the thing about the podcast here. We're all about raising revenue, raising margins, increasing EBITDA, improving valuations within the company, giving you more operational cash flow. A couple of points, what you just said, Alan. If we raise the close rate by 5%, let's say they were 25 and now they're 30. That pushes 16% more on sales through the pipeline that they already paid for, all this marketing money, all the labor's paid for, everything. So essentially, that 16% of sales is hugely profitable compared to the other percentage of sales
leverage
they're not getting, right?
Free leverage.
Now, you had mentioned a 15% number.
Yeah, 15% quicker. So the sales cycle reduces by 15%. So you're getting your money in 15% quicker. So if you do that on a large company like that, sales cycle of, let's call it 200 days, that's 30 days earlier that you're getting cash into the bank.
You're getting cash into the bank. You're also freeing up additional time for your salespeople to actually sell more. Because if they can close at 15%, you can keep them, let's say, at 100%. But now they're like, between 85 and 100, right? You got that 15%. They can go out and close more deals, guys and gals.
It's a force multiplier for sure.
Yeah. So being much more effective and we're being way more efficient. So that efficiency is going to drive into the effectiveness, which is going to drive up your EBITDA, folks, and your revenue at the same time. And you mentioned one other number. Was it two? You mentioned 5%, 15%.
So there was a 25% reduction in lost deals or deals they needed to clean out after the fact. So you also now, although your win rate's higher, you're cleaning out those deals far more effectively sooner. So I always say, Doug, there's two winners in a sale: the person who gets the deal and the person who gets out first. And the quicker we get out, the more we save on our resources, wasting our time on tire kickers or value propositions we're not going to win. So that number matters because it has, once again, to your point, these all add up together
Yeah.
to create that force multiplier.
Yeah. I mean, because look, folks, 25% lost deal. How many of you would like back 25% of the deals that walked away? Especially those of you who are selling super high end stuff, it's expensive to sell super high end stuff, right? So, if it cost you, I don't know, a few $100,000 or whatever to actually get that sale, and 1 out of 4 is walking away, man, you start adding that just one a month. There's 3.6 million gone out the door, right? But it cost you 300 grand, right? That's not revenue that walked out the door. That's your expense has walked out the door.
Yeah. Cost of lost sale. Spot on.
Again, your EBITDA drops, right? Your operational cash flow drops. So tightening up, think about this as Alan, what you're talking about, I fondly refer to as the leaky bucket in revenue, right? Because in sales here, we've got 3 holes that we're dropping out. One is the lost sales. One is the close rate wasn't high enough. And then we had the 15% of the sales cycle, which is now faster. You've just sealed those 3 holes in that bucket. So what does that mean, folks? That means you can pour more water into that bucket and it won't push out through the holes faster and faster and faster any longer, which means that your operations department is going to have more to do. Really, when it comes down to it.
Functionally more to do. Spot on, Doug.
Yeah.
And you touched on something there, Doug, that's a good segue into what I think is the third fundamental that is very critical for the CEOs on the call to be listening to, which is the number one hole created in that bucket is that you create a culture of inspection and not a culture of coaching. The job of coaching is not to read data. The job of coaching is not to analyze data. The job of coaching is not inspection. The job of coaching is ask critical questions to identify gaps that we can find actions to close. And when we run a business as if it runs purely by dashboards, we have the wrong culture. We want to move from triage to health. We want to move from inspection to foresight planning. And that's often the big cultural shift that's required, Doug, is that as long as we think by looking at the numbers, we can change behavior. I promise you, never in the history of my career has changing a formula in Excel changed the human behavior. Not that I've seen yet, right? And CEOs, we've got to understand this. There's data that you can see, but your managers have to get out from behind the mouse and go coach people on those gaps. And that's the shift you're going to see. The numbers will then take care of themselves. But what I tend to see, especially when we're quarterly driven, high pressure, we operate in this triage of firefighting as opposed to taking control of our sales engine and finding those holes, not making those holes.
That is a huge distinction. Folks, I want you to rewind this and listen to this again, because that's the key that most people are missing when they bring in somebody to, let's say, train their sales team. You can get a little better on the skills. They will sell more generally because the skills are going up. But if you really want to squeeze the full amount of potential into your marketplace through your sales team, you've got to address the human side of what's going on. And Alan, that's exactly what I just heard you say was we want to be proactive, not reactive on two sides. The skill side of the business, yes, but the people side of the business, because ladies and gentlemen, there's always 2 things in every sale: a business return on investment and a personal return on investment. And if you don't sell to both of those, you're not going to get the full amount of juice into the glass. It's that simple. And with your sales team, if you don't adjust and go and do just what Alan said, taking care of both sides of that house, what will happen is you'll get the compliance people in your sales team and go, yeah, okay, man, yeah, I'll do that exercise. And then they do like 5% of it, 10%, and then they stop, right? And no one's there going through and just on the accountability side, but also on the human side going, why, Randy? Why, Martha? Why isn't this not happening? Not in a top-down manner, which is what most people do, Alan, that I've seen in coaching, but from a place to help them cross that barrier of fear into buying confidence of their own abilities. Because we all grew up in environments, no matter what the environment was, we got some good stuff and we got some
Yeah,
stuff that is habitually not good for us.
agreed. Agreed. And I love what you said there because I love the saying that I use a lot, which is we are human beings, not human doings. And I know we love hard evidence. And when we get to my fourth fundamental, I'll give some more hard evidence. But it's the language in the organization that changes. There's words like, oh, that was the best deal review I've ever had. I didn't feel like I needed to justify my existence. And in actual fact, we can get to the pinpoint the gap much quicker. This eliminates the noise and the blah, blah, blah. And we can get into what we can action on the account far quicker. Hey, I've never wanted to walk away from deals. It's never been a good feeling for me. But this has really helped me understand that I'm wasting my time where I'm wasting my time. Work with the willing and find more of the willing. And those are the language changes that you see. And remember, because your culture is just the end of the sentence around here, which comes from Roger Connors from Change the Culture, Change the Game. You want to know your culture, just say around here coaching is. And CEOs, if you can answer that question and it's inconsistent, spoken about but never done, it's the last metric measured, the first meeting cancelled, then you need to understand you are missing, as Doug was highlighting, a fundamental play in closing those leaking holes in the bucket that are going to drive your revenue.
Yeah, I mean, you're moving essentially from selling at any cost to qualifying, right? Is what I'm hearing. And in that qualification stage, it's yes, it works, no, it doesn't. So in a win-win selling scenario, they've got to win, we've got to win. If we're just winning, they're losing, we're going to have buyer's remorse, right?
Spot on. And Doug, I just want to add there because you said something, and you probably didn't mean it like this. I want to pick on this nuance because it's important. Is a lot of organizations see qualification as a stage, not qualification as a deal practice. So what we teach is you qualifying the deal throughout its cycle, and you can walk away at any point where you see that you're not gaining deal momentum, because you have to get very stoic around. There's certain times we have to step away, and I use a simple email that says, "Hey, listen, we're closing the file. This doesn't seem to be a priority." 20% of people never get back to me. About 30-40% come back and say, Al, don't close the file. We just sorting some stuff out. That's when I get to the facts. And the others say, hey, Al, thank you so much for reaching out. We appreciate it. It's just no longer a priority. Now, how many more times, and I'm optimistic and I'm driven, how many more conversations and value proposition things I would have said that I didn't say because I didn't look at the score that said, Al, this isn't moving and you don't know why. We've got to pull some things on that. So just a key thing is that deal qualification is not we do the qualification stage and then we chase it at all costs. You're always qualifying because new stakeholders are coming in, new players are coming in, new problems are coming in, new challenges, new economic things are happening. And if we're ignorant to think we qualified well in the beginning, we're missing the point of qualification. At every point, I'm asking, what are my chances of winning this deal and is it progressing? If it is progressing, I stick to it. If it stands still, I've got to decide when I walk away.
Mic drop, koosh, right? It's because here's the thing, folks. If your salespeople are chasing deals and you're paying them a salary and that deal is not qualified, you're paying a salary out for somebody to chase something that you don't want anyways. There are no bad clients. They're a bad sales decision to take on the client that is not a fit. And then, so what do we do with that client? We push them on to operations. Then your operations team is now not happy. And everyone else that's dealing with this client is not happy. And the client's not happy. That's like saying, I'm going to go get somebody, marry this person. We're going to have children and we're going to have this dysfunctional family. But we're just going to keep powering through this for the next 22 years until the kids leave the house.
I love that you highlighted that, Doug, because that is the opposite of what we're saying about drowning operations. It's when we drown operations with deals that aren't at the right margin, where they buy with beer money, but always have champagne expectations, and they create this frustration. And as salespeople, we get frustrated. We're going, because why aren't you delivering? Well, because you told them something that was so far out of what we could do. So I love that you share this because that behavior does create dysfunction in operations, not caused by operations, but caused by overly zealous salespeople because we haven't filled the pipeline.
Let's go to that point. I always say, Alan, the master prospector will always outsell the master closer.
Yeah.
Right? But what I find is a lot of people in selling don't have enough prospects coming through their daily, ritual, which many of them don't even have daily rituals, but they don't have enough people coming through. So they get needy, right? They get that needy thing going on. And then they're grabbing onto it like, oh, yes, I got a date, and that's, I'm going to go through this, even though internally it's telling me, screaming to me, don't go out on this date, don't do it, right? They do it anyways.
Yeah,
And usually it ends up in a place where they don't want it to be. So
spot on.
why do you
And I
think?
love that you share that because I think it speaks to the confidence. But I always say that if your pipeline is your lifeline, then if you're lacking confidence because you're lacking pipeline, it's easy to say no to opportunities when you know you can focus elsewhere. When you got nowhere else to focus, you hold on for dear life.
Right.
So you have to create that sufficient pipeline. And once again, to step out of that anecdotal and get this fourth fundamental, is effective deal and pipeline coaching is going to deliver hard pipeline outcomes. And I want to mention this global company we worked with again and give a specific number because I know, Doug, you'll turn this into gold. But we're not talking about a small company. We're talking a company across 50 countries. This isn't a regional impact, right? So you're talking about a 28 percentage points increase on the year-on-year number of FLMs, frontline managers, that are achieving the mature coverage target. That means that a third of your frontline managers have increased how much cover they have. And now what happens is they've got a 34% increase in the number of deals reviewed in Q4, which is double what they did in Q2 and Q3 before we got them onto this coaching rhythm. And the one that matters is almost two times, 1.8 times more pipeline reviewed. And that's what's driving the shift in culture. And that's what's driving the shift in the numbers. And that's what's driving the value that the organization is putting on, which is only one of kind of 9 sales management disciplines, but one of the most important, which is coaching the deal to control the pipe so we can predict the forecast. And we often miss that because we're hiding behind the mouse.
Yeah. So what we're talking about is back end and front end now. So, Alan, in my world, that's where the electrical current, goes through my body because it's like, oh my gosh, I can see what's going to happen to the company. They're not only going to push more revenue, they're pushing more profitability, but now we're pushing way, way, way more volume through the front end, which is now going to translate into. So when we have a 5% close rate increase, we're talking about pushing way more volume through to that 5%. When we're talking about that 15% shortening of the sales cycle, we now can push more volume through because people have more time. When we're talking about the 25% of lost deals, not now that leaky hole is tight because before if we tried to push a ton of volume and owners and managers get this, please, if you have a leaky hole in the back end of the bucket and you just force a ton of new pressure into the bucket, you just widen the hole. So what ends up
Spot
happening is
on.
that 25% no longer is 25%. It's going to go to 25 to 35 or 40%. And what's going to end up happening, and I just had a client, I reviewed their accounts, and this is exactly what was happening, Alan. They're like, we're not making enough, so let's just push way more volume through the front end. And it was all they did was push tons of more volume. The revenue went up, but they still didn't have the money in the bank they wanted to because what ended up happening is in that bucket, they widened the holes of the leaks.
100%. And I mean, if I can just play on that, Doug, because I'm so glad you called it out. And I think there's 3 implications of this we ignore. So when managers first look at this data and they go, what do you mean 25% more lost deals? I said, no, this isn't a leaky hole. This is us putting the cup in the bucket and saying we're not focusing on this because we have productivity. When you play that volume without that, Doug, what you're actually doing is you're decreasing productivity of the frontline person.
Right.
Right. So now what you're doing is I'm now mediocre on more. The other massive risk is you're damaging your brand. You now you used to suck, now you suck in front of more prospects. Because your salespeople don't have the productivity capacity to meet that volume because they don't know what they should be saying no to because they're not confident to say no because they're not getting good deal reviews, right? So when you start to stack this, it's such a good picture of this ecosystem of how these things touch each other. Yet I always find we're trying to find these quick wins. It's this principle and this discipline that we know. When we effectively coach the gaps of our deals and take control of that, we can start to see that volume. And that volume is not coming out of a trend, Doug. It's coming out of the fact that the sellers are now confident and have the productivity to go and find the deals and say no to the ones that don't matter. And we break up with them before they break up with us because we understand it's a waste of our time.
This is so key, folks, because what Alan said about your brand, remember, there's something today called Google reviews, right? There's other review companies. but disgruntled people, and that's who you're selling to, people. You can put titles on them, CEO, whatever, it doesn't matter. They're still people. When people feel rejected in a way that they're just being ignored, they don't take it well, and nor should they, but they will go up and they'll start posting stuff online. It's just what humans do. Your employees who are not being taken care of will go post it on Glassdoor, let's say, right? Or some site that says, "Hey, listen, this isn't a great company to work for." Your buyers will post it in forums in which they belong to, or groups they belong to, or maybe even Google reviews. So here's the thing, if you're a trades company, for example, you don't want a bunch of ones and twos on your Google reviews saying, "Hey, I reached out to them 6 times. They never got back to me," or "They dropped me in mid-cycle. And I had this," let's say you're doing, selling to a homeowner, let's say, for example, and that homeowner needed air conditioning in their home because their daughter's quinceañera was coming up, and your salesperson just never got back to them. They couldn't install the air conditioning. Who do you think they're going to blame in the Google review? And so what that ends up doing is it hurts your reputation, and your reputation online matters more than you think it does today, because people go and check these things out. And I can tell you concretely, and Alan, I suspect they do that to you. They do it to me. If somebody's looking to hire our company to help them out, to grow their find hidden revenue, find hidden margins, they want proof.
Yeah, spot on.
Right. So,
and it's so interesting you share that, because that's where they go, Doug. And I mean, I'll be vulnerable with your audience, because it's important. Remember, we're all human, so we get good organic growth. We have a lot of postgraduates that move to new companies, pull us in. It's really wonderful. But someone said, we're the best kept secret in the market. So I hired a marketing agency who had a qualified sales opportunity target that they met. And I promise you, everyone I've worked with in the past was messaging me, say, "Oh, what are you doing to your brand, buddy? What's going on here? You feel disingenuous. It doesn't feel like what you used to say. We feel sold at. We feel like we're part of a machine. This isn't the same way." And I had to take that knock financially and take that knock on my ego and go, "This is not what works for us." And I know this stuff because I teach it. But, you want to get your name out there. But you got to realize, unless you're fixing those other elements, to your point, Doug, you can't just throw more. Let's just do more. Because if you're fishing in the wrong pond with the wrong bait in the wrong season, I don't care how many rods you got in that water. Nothing's happening. Adding more rods doesn't fix the problem. It just burns more productivity.
Yeah, or you because you're pulling, when you do pull things, you're pulling the wrong fish. You're pulling a clam instead of a fish. And so,
or an old boot.
or an old boot, right? Still going to be tasty, but it's still an old boot, right? It's like, no, folks. Alan, what's going on new in the world that people should know about you or your company?
Pretty much simple as always. We focus on one niche. We're willing to die on the hill that unless you invest in sales management, you go nowhere. And most companies promote people into sales management with no system. So we've been blessed. We've got a lot of large global clients, which we're really proud of doing this kind of work with. And that's where we're at. Really excited about the role of AI in sales, and also, once again, believe that it's a misnomer in terms of how people think they should be using it. Because what is happening, Doug, that you're probably aware of, is the trust of sales is decreasing, because we can all now craft a great value proposition and craft a great message, but people are seeing through it. And I think the trend that I'm excited about that's going to change is we're going to start talking to people again, not hiding behind LinkedIn messaging and emails. And top performers are going to connect with people, and that's going to be the differentiator. So we're excited about that trend happening. Still maintaining the disciplines of sales management is critical, because they're your number one lever. They are the mechanism that drives that scale. And often we treat them, as you said earlier, Doug, as just go and make sales. That's not their job. Their job is to grow salespeople, to grow sales by creating a system that's repeatable. And as leaders, your job is to give them the space to do that, but not just going, what do the numbers say? The numbers aren't everything. The behaviors matter.
Man, I think we'll end on that. I would like to say one thing about AI being overplayed, because you brought up a good point. Folks, those of you who are using AI is not an evil thing. It's just another technology. But if you're relying on it to actually be the human being that you're supposed to be when you're communicating with other human beings, you're missing the point of AI. AI is supposed to help you to do things more
Yeah.
easily with,
It augments your productivity. It
they,
isn't. It isn't you.
there
Yeah.
you go. And I can't tell you how many, like for this podcast, we get so many inquiries coming in, Alan. And I can spot the AI ones right off the game. And it's funny, they all say the same thing, right? And it's like
Yeah.
I'll type back and I'm like, "Are you using AI?" And they'll come back and say, "Oh yes, yeah, on the front end." And it's like, well, isn't that enough of a signal that people are tossing
Yeah.
your emails out because they can see, right? So
Exactly. Leverage it. Don't use it. I mean, you've said it so well. That's what it is. I leverage it all the time, but I
yeah.
leverage it. I make sure I have my human voice. It's genuine, and these are the things that are going to differentiate us as a profession going forward, and we can't negate that.
Alan, thanks so much for being here on the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. Folks, company is Growth Matters International at GrowthMattersIntl.com. Alan, how do they get a hold of you if they want to touch base with you personally?
The good thing with me is I'm a very unique name. So Alan Versteeg, type it into Google, but pretty much most of my content sits on LinkedIn. So if you go LinkedIn, type in Alan Versteeg, you'll find me there. That's the easiest place, or Alan V at growthmattersintl.com.
Great. And Alan, Alan Versteeg, Versteeg. It's a very
Yes.
unique name, not like Doug Brown. So, Alan, thanks for being here again.
Doug, thanks again. Thanks for having me.
All right. So, how much is leaking out of your bucket, and how much are you not training your people? Or, better question, I think, is can you train your people and can you put seal some of these leaks in the bucket? If you think about what Alan and I were talking about, we're talking about creating the front end, which is what most people talk about. Like, let's just push revenue into the process. But if you're driving sales up 30% and you're spending $1.10 for every sale that you're getting, let's say, and you need to spend $1, well, you're driving 30% up at, that 10 cents, if you will, losing every single time you're driving sales. And so what ends up happening is it's not that people don't understand the concepts of what we're talking about. It's how do you put them in the right proportion? Because usually what's happening is from an owner standpoint, you're driving the numbers, but when you get to the end of the quarter, or the end of the half year, or the end of the year, you're looking at the numbers and you go, why isn't this all in my bank? We are working harder, we're growing, we're going through this process, but it's just not hitting. And the reason behind that is it's not because you're not intelligent. It's not because you're not driven. It's because you're not seeing how the numbers flows through every single department, division, person through the company, the money flow. And you're not sure because you can't see it because you don't have the data. And then what ends up happening is you end up with a harder time at the end of the year or the end of the quarter. And you're like, the money's not in the bank, but it should be. Of course, because it's just sitting there in the business at this point. So if you think about what Alan was talking about, if you free up a 5% close rate, imagine today you doubled your close rate, right? What would happen to your profitability? You stop those lost deals from going through, right? You back down on some of these metrics that are higher than they should be. So you've got that challenge going on in a company, and then you've also got the other challenge on the company, which is you've got not just the leaky bucket, but you've got people who are sitting there idle. You can evaluate your own sales team, maybe 1 out of 5, 2 out of 5, 3 out of 5, whatever, 4 out of 5. Even if you had 4 out of 5, you still have someone who's not producing on that level. How do we get them to be 5 out of 5, right? Most of you would be overjoyed to have your people hitting quota. I just talked to a company the other day, and they're almost half their team's not hitting quota, but they still don't train them to get to that place where they need to be. So training is a huge component of revenue growth and profit growth. And if you're not doing it, I implore you to do it. Look at your business. If you feel you don't know where the leaky bucket's happening, if you feel you got hidden revenue, hidden margins, or you can increase your revenue and margins, maybe you know how, maybe you don't. You want somebody to take a look at it. That's where you reach out to us for that diagnostic that I talk about. Just email me at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com. Let me know what you're looking for. We'll have a conversation in 15 minutes. I can tell you, do you have money sitting there? And if you do, great. We can go get it, find it, and get it back for you. Until next time, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast saying, go out and sell a lot of stuff, but sell it profitably. Play win-win-win. You win, they win, someone else wins. Best sale in the world. You don't have to discount, just have to convey value perception of what they want. Until next time, to your success. This is the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. Doug Brown saying, have a great day.